And good evening, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It is called McDuff Lives 2. And because we're on our backup channel this week due to a YouTube strike, but that's not going to slow us down one bit. We are ready and raring to go with David Cranmer Underdown tonight. And we're going to have a nice, good time catching up with David after 2 weeks. And 2 weeks worth of Twitter on David's Twitter account is really a lesson in history that I love it. I love reading your Twitter. So thanks for all your work, David. And I really do benefit from what you do. And so thanks for being with me tonight. And let's have some fun. What do you want to talk about first?
Well, I'm open to anything, anything. Like you said, I kind of cover a lot of topics over the course of 2 weeks. I'm always interested in, historical stuff related to to your dad's story, but, also to the stuff going on with the Ukraine and Russia and sort of tying that back to George Webb's work as far as the, investigating the Russian election interference and that angle. I'm also always very interested in too.
Well, this week I've been spending a lot of time with The Real Anthony Fauci by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I know, I'm sure you know that a lot of us have been looking at that, Mark Kulak in particular. It's a subject you and I haven't talked about. Is that something that you do study, or do you have any strong opinions, or should we just leave it aside and talk about other things?
I think of the charrette that we had on Mystery Island, like when the pandemic sort of first broke out. I always try to connect stuff with my own personal stories. So with a lot of these medical professionals, there's a couple generation jumps, but like my great grandfather was a Cornell Agricultural School graduate, and his brother, my uncle, was also. So anytime you have someone like Fauci, being a Cornell medical person, that's always interesting to me. As I've said, my grandma on my dad's side, their family's all University of Michigan doctors, which is where Francis Collins, who was the head of the NIH, that's his background, was at U of M medicine. He was doing the Human Genome Project there before he sort of got into the government work. So, I follow Mark's stuff really closely. I know George also has quite a bit of experience with the Howard Hughes Institute in San Francisco and knows quite a bit about Fauci's background. So, I'm always curious. I'm always, obviously curious about people's backgrounds. I know with his high school, he went to St. Regis in New York City, which is, right by where, Cornell Medicine and the Rockefeller University and Sloan Kettering Hospital, where Fauci has connections with Sloan Kettering through his father. His dad was the pharmacist at the Sloan Kettering Hospital. So that's another area that I really look at, because Sloan Kettering has really deep ties with Detroit and with General Motors and DuPont. Alfred Sloan was the CEO of General Motors, who worked very closely with Jesse Jones, who was the head of the Reconstruction Finance Committee, and they did quite a bit of New Deal projects together. And then Charles Kettering is one of my most fascinating characters of the 20th century, who was it's one of the guys that started at the National Cash Register in Dayton, Ohio, and then he got into Delco, which was the Dayton Electronic Company. He's involved with the right. Oh gosh, I can't think of the full name of the airplanes, but he did Kettering. He was sort of the main scientist slash he was into a lot of the fuel technology. So people that know the stories about tetraethylene and the Luftwaffe and the Exxon and General Motors partnering with that. Kettering was the guy that was really one of the main fuel scientists that was working on propulsion and different recipes for fuels for the auto industry, but also for aviation. And then with he also has the patent for what was called the Kettering bug, which was the first missile system, self-guided missile. So Kettering is somebody that's really again, somebody that I look at with his background. And then of course he later in his career ends up as the main technical advisor to Sloan Kettering Hospital, which was the cancer hospital originally that was, a big gift by John D. Rockefeller Jr. And then before that, it was John Jacob Astor III, I believe, was the original cancer hospital founder in New York. So, I look at those angles with Fauci to try to get like the background of, he's somebody that Mark is obviously like one of the best researchers, and he really has struggled to find any kind of background on Fauci's mother and father. There was the bit about him owning a pharmacy in Brooklyn, and then later going to Sloan Kettering, and then like in his obituary, it mentioned a lot of his peers were people that were in the Department of Energy or Atomic Energy Commission at the time. So, so that's what I look at is sort of the deeper history as far as, him promoting, a treatment for the pandemic. I wasn't a buyer of it. I was highly suspicious of the entire presentations with Trump and Fauci and with Deborah Birx and with Redfield. George had given us a lot of information. He knew those characters from his work at Howard Hughes. He knew a lot about their background. So that was something I tried to remember and weigh when, listening to them, talk about flattening the curve for the COVID.
Flattening the curve. I almost forgot about that phrase. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like Deborah Birx,
Yeah.
her, Harry the Greek did a great article on her. She was a colonel in the army. She was with PEPFAR, which was George W. Bush's AIDS program in Africa. She was running that program. So to have her sort of play the maternal, comforting, nurturing role when the pandemic broke out was, I thought, incredibly disingenuous given her technical experience and position working, with which is, I believe, the largest, medical program is PEPFAR. I think that is the number one biggest funded program. So
What is PEPFAR?
PEPFAR is it's like President's Emergency Preparation for AIDS in Africa. It's basically the AIDS program for Africa. So a lot of the funding for these different breakouts in Africa, it's I don't know if it falls under USAID or if it's under the NIH, but it's basically the African AIDS program was run through PEPFAR.
Okay, I haven't read that chapter yet of the Real Anthony Fauci book by RFK Jr., but I've skimmed enough of it to know that it's a horrific story, and the book, along with other things that I've read and my own just general gut feeling, has led me to the opinion that AIDS was in many ways a construct that was put together in order to justify medications. That's my opinion based on what that book says. And when you see what they've reported in this book, and it looks like it's true, the remember AIDS started with the homosexual community and was thought to be a sexual STD, a sexually transmitted disease. Uh, and then suddenly it's showing up in Africa in women and in heterosexual couples. And what you read in the book is that the diagnosis was completely fallacious. It didn't matter what you had. They did not even do a PCR test on the population of Africa. When they set up these clinics and they had everybody come in and get tested and all this stuff, if you had certain symptoms, then you were told you had AIDS. And once you were told you had AIDS, then then they gave you the medicine. And the medicine was that ACT.
Yeah.
And they were just doing it for human trials in complete violation of all ideas of medical ethics as well as the Nuremberg Code. There was no informed consent, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people. It's horrific. And so the idea of Deborah Burks having been in Africa administering that program, well, she knew what was going on. She would have known that this was experimental and reckless at best, if not intentional murder. Uh, I tend to go towards the murder side of it because I've seen enough of this stuff to think, hey, these people are not innocent. They're thinking they know what's going on, and they're doing it for financial reasons or to to keep from getting whacked. Maybe would be another reason that they're doing it, but they're doing it. And Mark is appalled. I'm appalled. I I really, when I see Mark getting emotional on his shows, I feel the same way. I think, my God, this Mark is a very serious researcher,
Yeah.
and the people ought to listen to him.
Yeah.
Uh, so good for you for following him closely, and I do too. And while we're on the subject, we send out our condolences to Mark and his family for the recent loss of his father-in-law. So
No.
we're
Well,
just learned that myself yesterday. So we're sorry for your loss, Mark, and look forward to seeing you soon.
yeah. Well, I remember when I was in first grade, my cousin who lived in Louisville, Kentucky, he got a blood transfusion, and that was in 1986 or whatever. That was right when Ryan White. I don't know if people remember Ryan White. He was a boy that was from Greencastle, Indiana, near Indianapolis, that was really used as the launch of, you know, he was somebody that got AIDS from a blood transfusion, and uh, I think George H.W. Bush was the one that was really during his presidency. I think was when they kind of launched the initial AIDS program. But that was something that I just remember just being so scared. My family, my grandparents were so afraid because he had gotten a transfusion in that window, and nobody knew what was going to happen. And of course, that Ryan White was just a 60 miles from where they lived, so it felt very real, to have it happening in Indiana. And I hate, always circling back to Indiana and to Eli Lilly and to Richard Lugar, who is the one that sort of negotiated these clinics in with the breakup of the Soviet Union, and they have all these different labs in the different satellite Soviet countries, and then with Mitch Daniels being sort of the protege of Richard Lugar, he had gotten into Eli Lilly, and also the Hudson Institute moved from New York to Indianapolis, and they had partnered with the Lilly Endowment. He then went to Purdue University, which is, again, like very close to me because that's where my grandfather and my uncles and my aunt, a lot of my family has gone to Purdue. So even with the pandemic breakout, Alex Azar, he was a Eli Lilly alumni, and he was somebody that was with Ken Starr during the, Lewinsky investigation with Ron Rosenstein, and um, uh, Kavanaugh was in there. There were a lot of characters that were sort of in that Starr team, and Alex Azar was one of them. So I'm really sensitive to the Eli Lilly. I know they were. I've mentioned before that like my family has fringe connections to the Lilly family as far as relatives fighting in the Civil War with Eli Lilly, and then with my grandma's close friend was the Lilly librarian at Indiana University. They had a Lilly library there, and then my mom had friends that went to Park Tudor, which was the Lilly school in Indianapolis. So I look at like Eli Lilly as a place that Ken Lay, who was from kind of the one that merged Enron, he got in there, and then George Bush was a Lilly person as well. So I always look at those angles as well, just because I don't know. I'm just I am just skeptical of the entire thing. I don't know what the motive is, or I'm very uncomfortable with because again, like, the science is out of my ability to really analyze it accurately. Like, I don't have any way to test things or measure things. That's something I've always struggled with from the very beginning was, can you measure it? Like, is the test accurate? Like, how confident are you that the PCR test is an accurate way to identify the problem, or is it something that, is it trustworthy? And it's something I struggle with because, within my own family, I want to give good advice, obviously, to my own family the best I can from what I've learned. And, they don't go with it. So that's been very hard for me. But, I just, as far as the book with, I haven't listened in great detail to the RFK Jr. book. I've heard bits, that you've read and stuff that Mark's talked about, but I really haven't like locked into that book as something that I really am, can speak on it like with a lot of understanding.
It's something to have on the shelf if you if you're a book person, because whether you agree with him or not, he has put together a tremendous amount of references and authorities, and he gives you a historical treatment of the whole thing from back, starting off with all the AIDS stuff and coming forward. But I think, one thing just to suggest to you is to discuss the fact that the CDC itself has admitted that the PCR test is not a diagnostic way. It does not diagnose this particular um, illness. It basically can find colds and different, what they call coronaviruses. It can find, generically, that there's some indications of cold, but it was not designed as a test to find actual disease. It was really just designed to see if they could find remnants of past diseases or past virus parts like virions and things. I, I'm beyond my depth too, but I
Yeah.
do think that there's enough literature that you could go to your folks and say, look, I know you've been relying on this PCR test, but they finally admitted
Yeah.
that it's not a, and think how monumental that is. That all of these statistics that they've been generating, all of these claims of cases. We have so many cases. Oh, what's that based on? Is it based on anything beyond this so-called test that's not really a test? It doesn't tell us anything. That's where the fraud, to me, this is where I think we have this is the biggest case of fraud in human history.
Yeah.
If I'm right about this, and I'm sorry, I cannot understand how any medical person can say that they can diagnose this particular virus because the test that they've been relying on for 2 years is not reliable. So it's all to me, it's all disgusting, and I get angry at it, and I don't feel like we need to dig too far into the nitty-gritty of the science when
Yeah.
we start to see not only the pattern of fraudulent behavior, but also the same characters, as you just pointed out so well, that are part of past sketchy behavior,
Hmm.
to put it mildly, and worse,
Yeah.
as I described about Africa. These people have no consciences. They somehow they grew up without a conscience. I don't know how, but they did.
Yeah. It's hard to understand. I know we were talking a little bit before the show about sort of our backgrounds, and like I said, I feel like I personally know families that are involved in this stuff, and it just doesn't I just don't see where that drive is. The whole Malthusianism and the kind of that East India philosophy of degrading people to the point where mistreating them is acceptable. I don't see it. I mean, I know it. I know it. I know it's happened, and but it just makes it hard because it is I do think it is a really small group of people that are that really believe that and enjoy tricking people or lying about it, or having it in a classified program that they can stovepipe it away from other people. Because that's the thing I get into with my dad a lot is he's like, well, the doctors want to help people, and I think that's true for the most part. I think that the doctors do want to help people, and with the way George has explained this virus and vaccine game, it doesn't take a lot of people to do the virus side of it that don't say anything to the other people. They're just trying to figure it out and help people. And as you sort of said, the doctors are in the fight, and they're handling the patients, and they have people coming in that are sick, and they're trying to do that. So they don't have the time to be investigating sort of the origins or authenticity. They're just using the tools they have to try to help people, and so it's hard to believe that anybody would create a system that's designed to be chaotic and confusing and frustrating for everybody. But I really think that is sort of the main drive a lot of this stuff is to just wear people out and frustrate them to the point where they just either submit or tune out. And that's just it's just hard for me because I want to sometimes people will post stuff on people don't interact on my Twitter much, but sometimes people will be like, do you think they'll get the bad guys? And I don't. I think that it's been going on for generations, and even when it's laid out, I don't know. I just don't. I just want to believe that people will say come forward that are in these kind of omerta situations where they just have these sworn to secrecy, where that's just over everything. I don't know. I've never even though I feel like I've been around a lot of this stuff, I was never invited into it, or maybe if I was, I didn't I sort of failed the initial feelers. But I don't know. I want to believe that people that are that can do something to impact it, that are in a position where they can use their voice to really
Amos, muff.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just turned on a video by mistake.
I
Sorry.
didn't know it was that they would. I mean, feel like Mark Kulak says that all the time. Like people that have a big audience and a platform that know that aren't saying something. I mean, I get that people are have security clearances, or they're part of clubs, or where they're sworn to not say things. But it just seems like, I don't know, at this point it is exhausting. It's been going on for the pandemic phase has been going on for almost 2 years now. And I don't know, as much as like it's personally gratifying to try to like learn history and kind of filter through the stories and try to get some understanding of how the different groups have sort of accumulated power and assets. It's also very frustrating that I feel like there's never any traction with any of it. And I try to be hopeful. I mean, but I feel like it's really just hurt my family and my I don't know, I don't want to be negative on this stuff, but I just feel like the evidence is, it just seems like confusion is the name of the game. The children of Satan.
Yeah, you have to get to the point where you realize that there are people out there that are basically satanic, and this is what my suggestion to you is: consider the difference between life as you and I see it and life as a zero-sum game. A zero-sum game, such as chess or checkers, which are played on a board with different squares. It's either black or white. It's either red or black or green or yellow, but it's only two colors, and you're on one or the other one, and one side's going to win and one side's going to lose, and that's it. There's no way that both people can win a chess game or a checkers game. This idea of a zero-sum game is the best metaphor for the attitude of the Knights Templar or the Knights or these business leaders today, in that they will tell you, it's war out there. It's a dog eat dog world, and they believe that. And they believe that every encounter that they have in the business world is a zero-sum game. Therefore, forget about ethics, forget about morality, forget about being a nice guy. If you get a chance to take advantage, then you take it. And if that hurts somebody else, well, that's their bad luck. And this is the attitude that comes straight from the Templar Knights to the Rosicrucians to the Knights of to the Knights of Malta, or all of these secret societies. And the other thing that I would add to that, just to try to give you more of a picture of it, Sean Ross did a show, his most recent show. His name is he goes by Jure over on his YouTube channel, and his most recent one is called Slayer Saints. And what he talks about is the pinning ceremony for people that are Navy SEALs or Special Forces or the Air Force special guys. They do this thing with you get your wings, right? You get a pin, and what they do is they stick the pointy end of the pin at your chest, and when you get your wings, then this is to be one of the real tough guys, right? You have somebody that's already in this kind of blood cult because it causes you to bleed. They punch you on that pin that they've going to pin to you, and the little needle end goes into your muscle, and they pound it again and again, and this causes you to bleed, and that puts you into a blood oath situation with everybody else that has done that particular blood oath. So it's just like the mafia, and it's just like any of the other, what George calls the smelly robes, right? When you've taken a smelly robe oath, then your loyalty is completely to the organization you just joined, and that's for life, and you can never violate that. And if you do, then they're going to kill you. They have to kill you because you know too much. So this kind of creepy mentality is what's running the world today. If I can get over on you, I will. That is the satanic, or even I would say reptilian, because we see a lot of reference to the reptilian brain in the esoteric side of what we look into, and the idea of turning loose your basic animal emotions, fight or flight. You're either a danger or you're meat, one or the other. And
Yeah.
whether if you run from me, then I'm going to catch you and I'm going to eat you. But if you look too scary, then I'm gonna haul ass, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
It's a zero-sum game. You either survive or you're somebody's meal, and that's the way that this basic satanic world is running right now. Despite all the wonderful Disney movies we saw as kids, despite anything that our preachers and priests and nuns told us in school, or anything that our wonderful, mentors, always be a good boy, always do the right thing. Um, the other day I was in a used bookstore, and I picked up the Boy Scouts handbook because I was a Boy Scout. Were you a Boy Scout?
I was for a year. I went to a camp in Vermont for like 8 summers, which was of course like the Nordic camp. So I know all of my, Loki and Tur and Thor and Odin from that. I know George has talked about the kind of the Scandinavian angle of a lot of this, as far as the cultic stuff. I mean, like I said, I mean, the schools I went to, the camps I went to
Yeah.
were with the right people. It was like your dad going to Loomis school. I mean, um, I was exposed to all that stuff. And, I just wanted to play floor hockey when I was there. That was my thing. And I don't know. I don't know. I just never, yeah, it was just I just didn't feel like I ever connected with a lot of that stuff. And, my nephew's in the Cub Scouts right now, and he's, working on his badges and all that stuff. And yeah, I mean, I worry about all that stuff because a lot of these, really influential characters in the story they're very into, being the leader of the entire Boy Scouts, or, the scouting. I know with the whole, German Nazi angle, there was a lot of, the scouts was a big way of, sort of programming culture. I don't know. It's I'm sorry. Back to the Boy Scout book.
Well, the reason that I raised it, oops, a curtain fell. The reason that I raised it is because it is a manual to be how to be a good citizen. To be thrifty, to be reverent, to be brave, you know, to be honest, to be helpful. All of these things, and to grow according to the way that the book is going to develop boys into considerably better young men than they would have been without going through that training. But the whole thing has either was fraudulent from the beginning, which I don't believe, or it got turned into a mind control thing where they have really some unfortunate incidents, and some scout leaders that should have never been scout leaders. Those kind of things have come in to corrupt the Boy Scouts, also corrupting everything else in our society, and that's part of an active program. Um, you know, Bez, Bezmarov, the Russian guy, described it very well. How the real aim of Russian intelligence in the U.S. is to undermine our faith in our country, in our institutions, in our flag, in our institutions generally. I do want to say thank you to Tehran Kupra, who points out that I am not correct about the pinning ceremony, so that Sean Ross may have exaggerated that idea. He says he's had it 7 times and it's not that big a deal. Okay, well, nevertheless, the attitude is still there in the upper reaches, and I don't think you would disagree with me on that, Tehran. And but say what you will, I'm happy to be corrected, but nevertheless, I do think that that's the phenomenon of just this idea of some kind of spilling of blood, make some kind of a blood oath with other soldiers, and that from that point on, your loyalty is now to your brothers, to your brothers that have taken the same blood oath, and that, of course, you can't be a blood oath brother and still have all your Boy Scout ideals and morality, just incompatible. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I say, this is what we got to confront. We've got to confront the fact that the people in power have gotten there by scrambling, climbing over each other, stepping on each other's shoulders, crushing each other, and whoever's there right now is like the king of the hill. He's the king of the hill now for, maybe he gets to live another 10 or 20 years. If they can perfect their gene therapy, maybe he'll get to live another 100 years, but that's not the way I want to live. I can't see living my life based on zero-sum games. Either I win or you win, and if I win, then you're going to lose, and that's just tough.
Well, my mom was in the Girl Scouts in Bloomington, and of course her scout master was Alfred Kinsey's wife, the famous Rockefeller sex therapist doctor. Her dad was the sidekick, Mrs. Pomeroy, the other one that was supposed to be in all the sex, orgies with Kinsey, was my grandma's neighbor in the nursing home. And, it was like a normal camp. It wasn't like, and again, like, I feel like my mom isn't faking it. It was they built terrariums and, did archery and, whittling and the normal stuff. And it wasn't like some crazy thing. My mom's friend, that's dad was the assistant to Kinsey, is very sensitive about the movie that came out. And he says it was genetic, fruit flies is what they were doing, was genetics. So take that, for what it is. I know that's, a lot of the, human genome was initially studied from, fruit flies, but I don't know. It's, I was never, offered or whatever included. I mean, I had my interview at Lazard Frere in the Rockefeller Center, and I got rejected from it. I'm still sad about it to this day. Even the more I learn about Lazard and how creepy they are and their history with Eugene Mayer and, all the Blumenthal.
Felix Rohatyn. I learned how to say his name, Felix Rohatyn. You didn't really want to work for him, did you?
What? I didn't. I was the person that wanted to get a good job to make my parents and grandparents proud. And Lazard had a big name, and my mom's sorority sister's nephew worked there and got me the interview. And it was very exciting to go into the Rockefeller Center. I didn't know about the whole history of the OSS and Alan Dulles having offices in there with Bill Donovan and William Stevenson. To me, it was the figure skating rink in Saturday Night Live and the Today Show. So I was just like, very hopeful and had my suit and everything and thought I had a good interview. But I don't know. Like I said, I mean, I've been, there's a lot of personal stuff about it where I just, it's hard. I mean, I know people want to, like I've said, like with my dad's mom's side of the family, they're, from Steubenville, and they've got the whole, I was learning the history of her grub side. Her grandma was a wolf, which her dad was a wolf, and then her mom was a grub. And if you look at the grub history, they were one of the first settlers in Delaware, and they were like getting into it over land deals with William Penn before William Penn arrived. And they had the big, mining operation in Lancaster that sold the guns to Washington for the Revolutionary War. But of course, I look at all this kind of, societies and blood oaths and stuff, and I look at the way that those relatives died, and I'm like, well, they were in on that stuff. I know my great grandpa was a Freemason from Steubenville. I never met him. He died in his 50s of a heart attack, but she had the double mastectomy, and they said she was schizophrenic, and she killed herself in an insane asylum. So I look at that stuff, and it, as hard as it is to think that that's your family, it does help guide me, because I do feel like they pick the way that they do stuff to people based on how they violated their oath, maybe. And I feel like I come from a long line of people that did violate their oaths. I had other relatives that burned, which I feel like is another sort of symbolic way to take somebody out. And I was kind of getting into it with the somebody about Sons of Liberty in Massachusetts, about Cotton Mather, and how I'm just I'm probably the hate Cotton Mather and increase Mather more than anybody. And I didn't know there was a William Douglas that had the Green Dragon Tavern in Boston, where the Sons of Liberty met and planned a lot of the revolution, was in William Douglas's tavern. And William Douglas and Cotton Mather got in fights over smallpox vaccines, and this is before the revolution. And of course, my grandma that burned up was a Douglas. She was a Douglas. So I feel like there is a lot of that.
What's a Douglas? How does a Douglas relate to the Cotton Mather story?
William Douglas was the owner of the Green Dragon Tavern.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
One that gave the book to Cotton Mather about vaccination technology. He was a doctor from Scotland, and he had gotten this book from the Royal Society that had the techniques from the Turks from 800 on inoculations. And he loaned the book to Cotton Mather, and Cotton Mather's like, we need to put it into law that everybody has to be inoculated. And he said, this is a bad idea. Again, like the story with Cotton Mather, being so old with Harvard and, the churches in Boston.
Yeah. I have to ask you, are you familiar with this book that I read? I read the whole book cover to cover on my show. I did it on the morning show, so you might. It's called "The How the Nation Was Won."
But
there's like 2 or 3 chapters in here about the Mathers, and while I had a bad impression of the Mathers when I from school, just very lightly touched on the Mathers, and I did study American history, but it wasn't that big of my education. So I think there's a lot in this book that I learned that is, you said that Cotton Mather and what was the father's name? I can't remember, but the 2 Mathers were people that you really despise. That's a long time ago.
it's a long time.
And one was on the side of mandatory inoculations for smallpox, and the other side was against it. And it's interesting because we have that same debate going on right now,
Right.
Which is right. And I've read both sides. It's like, yeah, the ones that were really into the inoculation are very convinced that it was save lives, and a lot of people thought no, it wouldn't. Is it statistically clear yet whether it did? I don't know. Maybe some people would say yes, and some people would argue that no. I don't think it's clear, but
it's not.
And I'm not going to try to defend the Mathers, except for just that you said that they were like the 2 of the most despicable people that you in your history. I don't know about that.
They were also the judges for the Salem witch trials.
Now that part I will contest on that. I don't think that's true.
Hanging people that were accused, and again, like that's I've told you that my Aunt Shirley, was she was a Jerome, and the Jerome family they lived right between New Haven and Hartford in Marion, Connecticut, where they had witch trials there. And that was where the Jerome family, the Detroit Jeromes, which my Aunt Shirley was part of. And then there's the Leonard Jerome family, which was the father-in-law of Winston Churchill Jerome, that was August Belmont's business partner in New York City. They were from Marion, Merion, Marion, Connecticut, and they had witch trials there, and they burned people. So I feel like there's this recurring theme of wherever my dad's side of the family was, they burned the women. And
I
so
see what you're saying. Yeah.
I think that what happened was just that they were, and again, like even now, people, the Scottish Masons are the root of all evil, and look at what's his name, Pike, like as the poster child for like, the Scottish Masons are the worst. Well, again, like if like learning the history of England and the unification of the crowns and the Douglas and Hamilton families and all that stuff, like that, I think is applicable, because I think that's the same Douglas that came over, was the Scottish Douglas, who basically had their titles and lands taken in Scotland. And then to have, 500 years later, people just like, oh, the Scottish are the, behind it all, and they're, they're the worst ones. Well, they probably are, some of them, but not all of them. I mean, put Cotton Mather in there too. He's the one that was, throwing the matches on the witch pile, so it's not like they, I don't know. I just feel like it's
I'm
hard.
going to do some research on that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I cannot picture Cotton Mather throwing matches on a wood pile under the witches. I'm going to look that up and try to verify that. I had that same issue come up with George one time. He really felt like Cotton Mather was this evil person. And anyway, the other side of the story is told in this book, and
Yeah,
that's
we
all.
now, I mean, Cotton Mather was, and I know your dad is a Harvard alumni, and it's hard, but Harvard is,
Yeah, it had nothing to do with Cotton Mather. That's 200 years earlier.
yeah, but James Conant was the president of Harvard, and he was
Now that
somebody that was very into that, in the MIT, and you've got your whole Eli Broad Institute with the MIT and Harvard now being a very big public health leader in what's going on right now. And so if you want to draw the line back to Cotton Mather and the Harvard Corporation, I mean, you've got Larry Summers, who was the president of the Harvard Corporation and was also a Treasury Secretary and did the bailout. So there is, and if you want to get into your whole Jeff Epstein conspiracy or whatever, he was somebody that was donating to the science at Harvard. So I don't think that it's when I say that, it's not just, oh, I don't like a guy from 300 years ago. I think that there is a line that goes, I look at who's the top dog, and Harvard is the top dog, and they had Lieber. They took out Lieber as, sort of a bogey, probably to protect the Thousand Talents program and all the other people involved in
you're
it.
talking about the scientist that was convicted recently of what, transferring technology to China.
He was officially, because George went to the trial. He was charged for lying to the FBI, like all of them. They floated a lot of, espionage and taking money, and that was all in the papers. But when it got down to what the real charges were, it was to lying to the fake document Spice Girl that presented fake evidence in the trial, and that's what he went to trial, or that's what he was convicted of, was lying to the FBI. The sort of the same thing they did with Mike Flynn. His charge was that he lied to the vice president, and that was his hide his other crimes and just say that, oh, he lied to the vice president, and have whatever years of back and forth over sort of controlled chaos to get people riled up, that again, like an Oliver North, like a military heroes being screwed in the courts. And I don't know, I hate getting like really fired up on this kind of stuff, but I do feel like there is personal stuff in there that, again, it's impossible to explain why I feel I try to lay out the history of stuff, but I really do, I hate feeling like a victim or whatever, but, I do feel like there was a lot of, um, bad behavior probably from my family, but also a lot of really bad stuff that happened to them that, I don't know. I just don't want me personally or my parents or my sister or my nephew to be, lumped in with a thing like, oh, the, Scottish Masons and, they're behind it all, or, like make it so simplified and not, specifically say which Scottish Mason, is it somebody that's still alive that is running a bank? I know that, with the whole Mississippi bubble, John Law, who was a Scot, got a lot of ink, about him being the, worst financier in history and, ruined the economy of France and led to a revolution based on his Scottish banking. But again, where does that come from? That's East India Company economics that he learned it from. So who really is the one to blame on this stuff? And, I feel like there's, a lot of again, like people just want to have simple catchphrases and just say, oh, it's the the Irish or the Scottish Masons. Or I feel like with your background, I have Irish on my mom's side, a lot of Irish, and
Good for you.
yeah, I've got my my Pollies and McClures or whatever, so I know the Pollies are more Scottish, but um I feel like, again, you take their food, you kill their men, you starve their people, and then say, oh, they're idiots because they only knew how to grow potatoes. So they they didn't diversify their portfolio, and they lost big because they didn't, they weren't good farmers, which is, I mean, you had the guest on that explained that the history of agriculture there, and that it's not, they weren't just growing potatoes. It's a BS story from the East India Company, and they, they want to victimize people and then blame them. It's the whole Malthusianism, and I don't know. I'm just very, very sensitive to it.
It's 9 o'clock, but I'll go a little longer if you will.
Yeah, I'll keep going for sure.
All right. Okay, a couple of things. First of all, don't confuse my attitude towards Harvard. I think I am disgusted at Harvard and all the associations that you mentioned, and you're exactly right that Harvard is the boss institution, unless you want to just say bring in all of the Ivies, and I would certainly want to put Yale right up there with them, and Princeton. And we learned more about things like stuff going on at Cornell, which I didn't know until we started doing all this research. And of course, Andy Craig was a graduate of Cornell, and we Cornell is an amazing source of creepiness if you want to look for that stuff. The idea that we're looking for a single person or group that's behind this, that doesn't lead anywhere. I agree with you. We need to have the names. Give me the name of the person. Give me his badge number if it's a cop. But don't just tell me it's the Scottish Masons. But I do think that it's absolutely worthwhile to study Albert Pike, to study his career as a so-called general in the Confederate Army, and the atrocities he was involved in, and to study his morals and dogma, and to realize, what he's doing is converting Christianity into an ancient sun cult religion, which does have a zero-sum game. That is where they justify the killing. That's where they justify the oath taking and the secrecy. It's because they see life as a zero-sum game, and if I don't kill you, you're going to kill me. So, but Scotland, was not the source of this. The Scottish, and I have, I'll tell you my own personal research I'm on right now is, you've heard me talk about Lorenzo Ricci, Ricci, the Jesuit at the time of the American Revolution, and Matteo Ricci, who was the Jesuit that went into China and became a famous opener of China and enlightened supposedly the Chinese to Western science, and that the Ricci name. Well, there was a guy named Rizzi, Rizzi, that was the personal secretary of Mary Queen of Scots.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that time that Rosicrucian or Freemasonry first started in Scotland. You're talking about, early, like 1600s or even before that, 1500s. And that introduction of Freemasonry seems to have coincided with the fact that a lot of the Scottish nobles claimed that Rizzi had impregnated Mary Queen of Scots. Now, the name Ricci and the name Rizzi, I looked that up. It's the same name. It's just a different spelling. You might pronounce it with, you aspirate the Z or you don't. Ricci, Rizzi. It's the same name. And so is Mary Queen of Scots the mother of King James the First, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole dynasty with Charles the First, Charles II, James II, the Pretender, all these people could be bloodline Ricci's from the black nobility of that traces their wealth all the way back. So the esoteric stuff that comes in with the black nobility becomes the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons. So it doesn't start with Scotland. No matter where you want to start, you can start anywhere. You can say you can start with Cotton Mather if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree that you can draw a straight line from Cotton Mather to James Conant, but I do understand the idea that that these traditions exist over hundreds of years. And another thing I would say is that if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Right.
If your family tradition is mafia, then you're going to grow up in the mafia. If your tradition is to be a Scottish Freemason and take blood oaths and and lay down in a crypt, and that's what you're going to do.
Right.
But unless there's an actual intervention and a decision to get out of it, they're just going to keep on going, and that's why we can't get through to them. They have just layers and layers of insulation that are going to keep them from hearing what we have to say. I'm sorry to say, but no, Harvard is a terrible disaster right now, and they are completely at the service of these elite fundi. To go back to the black nobility term, the Italian word fondo or fund, or just a really deep hole of money that you can use to pay off people, or hey, if you win some, you lose some. You just pay the money and go on to the next game. It's a terrible thing, but we have to understand that there are deep funds of money that have been there since ancient times.
Right.
And that is what starts a Ricci out into the world to create more people that they can control in future generations, because it's an ongoing generational program to control the world, whether it's, you call it Freemasons, or go all the way back to some ancient kingdom in the Middle East.
Right. Well, another, I didn't really learn a lot of European history at all, and that's something that I'm very interested in. With connecting it with, you talked about Mary, the Queen of Scots, and I forget who Elizabeth's advisor was that it convinced her to execute her, but and then with Mary Tudor, the Bloody Mary, that was a big revelation to me that her husband was Philip II, the Spanish Habsburg king. So there's quite a bit of that's what I'm really finding, is that Portugal and Spain has quite a bit of the history. I know, like Sean Ross likes to talk about Switzerland, which I do think is a really important history. But I think the whole the St. James Way, the Crusade. You talk about the Templars and the Crusade. That was a lot of that was from Spain to the Middle East, and sort of learning those traditions, because again, like I feel like the way they explain this stuff is they do make it really basic, like, oh, there's they're Freemasons and there's this and that, but there's different there's different intricacies of different groups. And like I didn't know about the whole like Trappist monks and their history with the Chartreuse, with their their legacy of creating potions, and like all that angle, and how those patents were sort of passed through different French revolutions and Napoleon and all this stuff, and how there's definitely layers and layers and layers to this stuff. I do think that the old schools like Harvard, I mean, they were all chartered. Those are all, the Ivy Leagues were all chartered schools by English monarchs. So I do think there is very old tiebacks. So when I do say like Harvard, I mean, I also look at the whole Manhattan Project and the National Science Institute and the idea of the atomic bomb, and how the Compton brothers and Conant and Vannevar Bush and Loomis and a guy named Frank Jewett were sort of setting up these labs, which I do think are the root of these Q clearances through the Department of Energy, which was Atomic Energy Commission. I think a lot of the kind of secret groups go through MIT and Harvard and Lawrence Livermore at Cal Berkeley and Stanford, and so I do try to get the names, and so when I say someone like a Cotton Mather, I look at it because he was a president of Harvard, and I do think that because Harvard is in Cambridge, that Cambridge has a very old legacy with Harvard and Cambridge, and like Oxford has the Rhodes Scholarship program, so you can tie in the whole the South African, I'm trying to think what the modern name of it was after the Boer War, but you can sort of tie in those angles as well, because those we talked about Harvard a lot, or I mean with Yale, with their history with the East India Company and with the Russell Company, which ties to Boston too. There are these old colony relationships that I think are there. I think it is part of sort of the secrets that they don't want to, mention, that the Harvard Corporation has an older charter than the Constitution, or that the Yale company corporation is older than the Constitution. So again, do they run a lot of the technology and the IP through those institutions? I think they probably do. And you mentioned Cornell, which of course is sensitive for me, because that was where my Underdown, William Underdown and Helen Douglas were both from Trumansburg, New York, which is one town over from Ithaca. So they're very Cornell oriented. They went to Cornell, and my great uncle that died at age 27 was Cornell agriculture. But I didn't know Edward Bernays is a Cornell agriculture graduate, the great propagandist. He is a Cornell ag school person. So there are misdirections on people's colleges, I feel like, where they may have studied in one area but maybe doing something else. So I don't, again, I know who they worked for. My grandpa in Ann Arbor worked for the Alex Dow, who was the Detroit Edison Company. And then my uncle that died early, he worked for, William Carey Sanger, who was Undersecretary of War to Elihu Root. So there's going to be something, it's probably going to be like the chemical weapons or whatever that they were involved in. But again, they died really young. And, so when I get into this stuff, like, I know they're in the mix, they're in there with the right people, but they were the ones that died really young. And I just worry, like, almost bracing for my generation of family to be blamed for certain things that happened, 3 or 4 generations ago. And so again, I just get really sensitive just to this sort of the snap, like, oh, it's the Scottish masonry, or it's Israel that's behind it all. You know what I mean? I feel like there's just very simplistic explanations for, again, like, all the organizations I feel like are set up where, I do think the pyramid model is right. It's a top-down system. 99% of the people are not read in and don't understand, and wouldn't, think, be part of some scheme or whatever. But there are partnerships, and I like to try to learn who the people are. And I really think that from that colonial period, I think Cotton Mather was a really bad one. And also the Vesey, who was the minister at the Trinity Church in New York by Wall Street, because that was chartered by Queen Anne. And then I know the other thing with the Stuart monarchs is that they were involved in the Royal African Company, which had the again, like, I know slavery is a very hot button issue for people and rightfully so. But if you really learn the way that operated, there was I think it's called, like, the Arsenios, was the privilege to trade in slaves. And that was something that was
Asiento.
the Asiento. And that was passed between the British East India Company, the Spanish companies, the Amsterdam-based Dutch. It was something that was in treaties that they passed back and forth. So there was quite a bit of shifting of who was doing it. But I feel like that what has happened is they have taken all the bad behavior of all of the trade companies that participated in that trade, and they want to just say Southern Americans. They're the ones holding the bag. They're the bad guys. They're the racist ones. And we're not going to talk about, the 80 years that the Spanish did it, or the 60 years that it was East India. Like, they've tried to carve it out and pin it. And I guess I just, like, I like to try to understand the full backstories on stuff, because again, like, I do worry that, like, I do feel like probably historically I have family members that were involved in that kind of stuff. And so I just want to, get the story straight. If they were the bad ones and, people took them out because they were bad, then so be it. But I mean, I'm just trying to learn, the full, as much as I can, to try to understand the, where we are now. I mean, I feel like now in our country today, they're trying to say that Southern racists are the, you get people that are the heads of our FBI and our intelligence organizations saying that, white nationalism is the, great threat in our country. And so, I do think it's relevant. It's very sad for me that, here we are, of having, had a country for, 300 years, and we're still, at the point where that's, what our top people say.
Well, it's a big lie, and it's a control mechanism, and it's convenient politically, uh, but it's a big lie, and you're right. And the only way to fight it is with facts, and we can certainly provide tons and tons of facts if they have an open mind. Absolutely, the Spanish were the biggest importers of slaves into the Americas, primarily to Brazil. I mean, the Portuguese to Brazil, the Spanish to the rest of South America. But that thing, the Asiento, became the basis of the British commercial empire, because they fought with Spain, but but then there came a time when British had completely dominated, and they, instead of continuing to fight, they just said, okay, we'll make a deal. And so you can carry all the slaves for Spain to the New World. And even when England and Spain were fighting, they still respected that commercial contract deal. And is that not a wonderful precursor to the business as usual philosophy of the corporate minds of IG Farben and Standard Oil and the DuPonts and ITT and all of the corporate uh, elites during World War II? They had deals, and they made a deal with each other that no matter, even if we're fighting, we're going to keep to our business as usual. That dominant idea of business is the most important thing in life. Is what we're talking about when we say, yeah, and it is military backed up trade too. If you don't go along with us, we're going to kill you. And or if you want, we'll addict you to opium, and you can just keep paying us money, uh, you know, due to your. But wow, we've covered an awful lot, and although my brain is getting tired, I want to keep going, just to follow up on these things. Absolutely great to hear your perspective, and I do feel for you with these people in your history that have been burned. That's just horrible.
Yeah.
And that is a terrorizing thing, like they did to Gaddafi and the the guy that Roberto Calvi, the banker that got caught, uh, hanging upside down from the Blackfriars Bridge in London, as a just a terrorizing thing to say, if you don't go along with this, then this could be you.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that's the theme of tonight, is we have to realize that there is a power that is very, very evil, that is willing to do whatever it needs to do to keep going. And just like with some of your relatives, it sounds like, as well as with my dad, and they let you into some program, you do what they want them to do, what they want you to do, and then they're done with you and they kill you. They get rid of you. That's what I think of my Uncle Bill Cotter, who was the congressman from Hartford, the first district of Connecticut. And before he was a congressman, he was the insurance commissioner for the state of Connecticut. And when he was the congressman, uh, when he was the insurance commissioner, he was the lawyer that he was the one that approved the ITT and the Hartford merger,
Hmm.
which was a great boon for your friends at Lazard Frere,
Yeah.
because they were able to finance the deal, and they got a whole lot of cash uh, that they could invest in other places to try, to just keep the game going for IT&T. I read Charles Higgins's book, Trading with the Enemy, I really got turned on to the fact that IT&T, it was kind of like running the Blackberries, of that era. They had control over all the telephones. They had control over all the telegraphs. They had people in South America that were basically telling the Germans what the Americans were doing, and telling the Americans what the Germans were doing, and playing both ends against the middle. And that gets right back into my whole thing about the synarchy, because that's who those people are, is the ones that are just going to say, hey, we're going to make deals with each other. We're going to be like blood brothers, and we're going to make
Yeah.
all this money together. We're going to make sure that nobody else gets into the money end of it, and we're just going to use and abuse and take advantage and steal, rape, pillage, do whatever you want to do, whatever you will. Do what thou wilt out
Yeah.
there in the world with us peasants. Yeah, exactly. So you can't give up.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't.
This has got to make us mad, and
Not,
I see you. I see you. You're very very emotional, and anger, I think, is what's really there, and I'm glad to see that. I'm angry too.
well, I just again, I just like review my life and the relationships I've had and the backgrounds people have had, and it's just a lot of it feels very disingenuous, like just connecting people's family histories, and I don't confront people, or I don't, but it's there, and it's just hard, it just makes my it just explains why I sort of withdrew from a lot of stuff, and always was socially awkward and uncomfortable, because it didn't, it just felt like stuff was off. But it was never within my own family. My own family was very loving and wonderful. My parents and my grandparents on my mom's side, my grandpa on my dad's side was the angriest person I ever knew in my life, and he's the one whose wife died when she was 42, and his dad is the one that died in the car accident in 1930, and he was sent to the Trudeau Sanitarium in Lake Saranac, right next to the Camp Knollwood, where all the Lewis Marshall and Daniel Guggenheim and all those guys had their camp, where Einstein went to hear about the atomic bomb dropping, was at Lake Saranac. So when he was 14, he went to the Trudeau Institute, the sanitarium. They said he had a collapsed lung from ingesting a peanut. So God knows what that means, with the nut ingestion metaphor for a 14-year-old. But he, lost his dad, and his mom was, she was the Douglas, and she later is the one that burned. And he was a pissed off person. I never understood, I never was around him much, because he was just a kind of an angry guy. And he had a rough relationship with my dad, but that's just sort of the way it was. But as far as like the ITT and like the communications, I think people need to know about Crypto AG also, because that one was the story of the Noble family, the Swedish oil and dynamite and Peace Prize family. Everybody thinks of their Peace Prizes, but they were the munition company from Sweden. And
Dynamite.
they were the Baku oil, they invented the oil pipeline, the oil tanker, and, all this technology. And when the Bolsheviks came and took over Russia, Walter Teagle from Exxon, which was Standard Oil of New Jersey, is the one that did the deal with them to get out. What did the nobles do? They rolled their money into the cryptology equipment with the Rothschilds. And I know, you're not supposed to say that because that's a conspiracy, but they're a very critical to understand who they are and different generations, which cities they were in, which companies they own, because they are a very important family historically. But they were in Crypto AG, and then it was Boris Hagelin that was running it. Boris Hagelin was the friend of William Friedman, who was the cryptologist that started the NSA. And so you want to get into the Pearl Harbor bombing with the purple machines and the deciphering that. Well, William Friedman from Michigan State University was the person that started the NSA, and he did the deal selling the Crypto AG machines with Boris Hagelin, and they eventually were sold to the CIA and the BND in 1970. So that was the machine that apparently was used by Reagan. They were able to tap in and get, I know IT&T also had their communications. Also Siemens in Germany, they had the first telegraph line from Europe to I think it was Madras. It was somewhere in India where they had the East India trade going. But that these old telecom companies are really key. And the Bell family, I've been learning about them because they're one of the founders of the National Geographic Society. And then the one Bell son was the one that was doing the dealing with Ken Nichols that did the uranium from Congo. So the Bell family is all the telecom people are really interesting historically, and I know IT&T is famous for being one of the sort of trading with the enemy companies. But I think that AT&T Sprint now is Southern Railroad. You have Bill Barr was lawyer for, the AT&T and GTE and all these, telecom companies. I know I've said that before, that my theory is that the telegraph lines were the railroad lines, and that they nationalized railroads, but then they sort of took the telecom through the railroad system. And that was an asset that's a really big, historically, is the railroad system, and also the telegraph and telecommunications. And it plays up right into now with George, with CNN and the history of Time Warner and AT&T and these telecoms that own a lot of these assets that are the parent companies of. And you even get into the Rockefellers and RCA, which Owen Young, who did the Young Plan, which was the settlement of World War I, was RCA, and that's Rockefeller Center, and they created the whole Rockefeller Foundations, and everything was done under the side by side with General Electric and with RCA. So again, just like trying to really pin who the characters are, who had the intelligence agencies, who are the banking relationships. That's what I try to do. And I don't like to get thrown off by people that whatever, support Cotton Mather or whatever, or because I do feel like it's again, it's I don't know what people's what they learned about history or who their family is, but if you grow up in the mafia, from my experience, you're a congressperson now. The people I know are in government or have very prestigious jobs, even though their family was the sliding the hooch across the Detroit River for the Purple Gang to the Blind Pigs or whatever. They're not the they're the big lawyers, and the Bernstein law family, which is the the big law firm in Detroit. Their grandfather or great grandfather was the founder of the Purple Gang. So it is like the Godfather movie, where they talk about, I want to have Senator Corleone, or that is the progression of how it goes. So I don't think that the groups just stay as the the hitmen or the bagmen. I do think they move up the chain and get more sophisticated as time goes on. But it's I guess it's just hard for me, because I feel like again, I feel like people that are in positions that could say stuff, I don't know what people's oaths are or whatnot, but there are people that could make an impact that don't. And that's very I try not to have high hopes for anything. I just try to learn as much as I can and just accept what happens, and be accepting of it. But I do feel like there are people that could help to get us out of this that don't. And it's again, I feel like people have their cover stories and their intelligence backgrounds, or their their secret society backgrounds, and they'll just never give it up. They'll play out their role till the end. So if that's the way it is, then I guess we just keep going on with the confusion and back and forth, and never seeming to really make ground.
But we are just like these Canadian truckers. I think the truckers are making ground. I think that governments are reacting to that, and other people are reacting to it and starting their own. And I see there's caravans going on in this country now. But not to open a whole new subject, but to get back to Scotland for a minute, because I know that we're not here to bash the Scots. Irish people never bash the Scots. It's never been done in history, except for every day and twice on Sunday.
Hated the English, and that they felt like the Scots were their.
I didn't hear you.
What's that?
What you said wasn't. I didn't hear it. Would you say it again?
I see. I don't know. Nobody ever explained these sort of rivalries to me. I always just assumed that Scotland and Ireland were got bullied by the Brits, and so they're both against the English. And
of course,
that I know there's the northern Ireland and Southern Ireland and the religious sort of angle, but I always thought that that they were sort of together as far as the you know, that they'd been ganged up on by the Brits. But I don't know this stuff. Nobody explains it to me, so I'm always curious to hear what the background is from your perspective.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like music, like Irish, is synonymous with music. It's a very musical country, and as far as Scotland is concerned, as I understand what happened, was that one day an old Irish flute just floated up on the shore of Scotland, and there was a shepherd nearby that had a sheep belly. Uh, and he stuck the flute into the sheep belly and blew on it.
Okay.
And he said, "Wow, that sounds great. This must be music." And so, ever since then, you see these Scotsmen walking around with these goat bellies, squeezing on them under their arms, and these flutes come, sounding, some kind of noise that I'm not quite sure what it's supposed to be, but they think it's music.
Okay.
But that's just a little Irish story for you. That's all. Um, Getting back to the Scots, um, I have to first of all, the truckers, Trudeau, Trudeau, Sinclair, Sinclair, Roslin Castle, Freemasonry, straight line. So there is a straight line to Justin Trudeau saying, exactly what you were saying about Harvard and Yale, and we could extend that to Columbia and some other places. They were created by the British Crown.
Mm-hmm.
They were created to serve the interests of Britain. And, like Harvard's motto, which you will see Veritas, Veritas, on the shield there.
Yep.
But what it doesn't have on the shield is the other half of the motto, which says for God and his church. And, so truth for God and his church. It's not just truth. It's truth for God and his church. And what church is that? The Church of England. And who runs the Church of England? The monarch of England.
Right.
And who runs the Freemasons? The British Royals. One of the other one will usually be the head of that branch of Freemasonry. So that, and then now one more, just because we're not beating up on the Scots tonight, just
Okay.
to let you know.
Rebuttal for it though, which is very interesting.
That Alan Dulles, who is, in my mind, he's my personal Cotton Mather, okay? One of the most evil, disgusting people that ever lived. And a direct participant, I believe, in my father's death. Dulles. The name comes from the British East India Company usage of the name Douglas.
Right.
It comes from Douglas. So my question to you is, are you related to Alan Dulles?
I don't know, but I can go. Well, I can go another generation, because if you go to John Watson Foster, he's from Petersburg, Indiana. And where's my grandma, who's she's Helen Imogene Pauley, and then my grandpa's Charles Wesley Key. They're from Princeton, Indiana, and from Patoka, Indiana, which is right by where the New Harmony settlement was, which was the Owens that got into it with the with Darwin's bulldog. Was it Edwin Huxley? I think it was Edwin Huxley was the grandfather of the Huxley. They had it was Samuel Wilberforce and Owen versus Huxley and Darwin. And they went to New Harmony, Indiana to set up a communist, the founders of communism or whatever was Owen in Indiana. And they had, Thomas Jefferson and James Monroe went to visit it. And the Benjamin Harrison was the head of the Northwest Territories in Vincennes, Indiana, which was right by there. but Dulles their grandpa was John Watson Foster, who was Secretary of State under Benjamin Harrison, and he's from Petersburg, Indiana, which is literally a mile from Mount Olympus, Indiana, where my grandma went to high school. They've never said that. They never mentioned that. I know the Dulleses grew up in Buffalo, New York, which is again where my grandpa William Underdown and Helen Douglas were from Trumansburg, which is by Ithaca. I don't know, but again, there's also another intriguing link when you say Maggie Sinclair, the Trudeau's mom. Lake Sinclair in Detroit is that is right off the Detroit River and Grosse Pointe. And whenever I talk about all of this Grosse Pointe intrigue with the Fords and Dodges and Algers and my whole theory about the Union Guardian Bank of Detroit sort of being the one that got screwed to finance the Nazis, basically, with Roy Chapin and negotiating as the Commerce Secretary with Henry Ford and with Edsel Ford over the bank holiday. That was all the Detroit Guardian building. That's Lake St. Clair. So there was a MacArthur who it was MacArthur, Lewis Cass, and St. Clair that was the negotiated the treaty that what was it called? Oh, I'm blanking on it. But it made Michigan a state. And there was Lewis Cass and there was John Mason. I think John Mason was the first governor of the state of Michigan. So yeah, there's a lot of that history. I'm not like saying, oh, they're all saints or they weren't the bad guys, but that group was also known for clearing out the natives. So I'm not so when I go back to this Cotton Mather versus William Douglas and the inoculation stuff, I think there's going to be a lot, the thing that's never mentioned in that conversation was that the Americans were clearing out upstate New York. So where my family ended up in Trumansburg in the Finger Lakes area, that was all the spoils of the Revolution. And it was the Sullivan campaign, which was George Washington and Light Horse Lee and Jefferson that were, or was it Alexander Hamilton? It was
I don't think Jefferson was involved. No,
it was Jefferson, and they went up and they basically did the kind of the same story that they talk about with the Irish, where they took all their food right before winter and starved them out and wanted to send them to basically to Ohio, to the onto Lake Ontario. They wanted to clear them out of New York, and that was and again, like the whole thing with William Robert Morris, that was supposed to be the financier of the revolution that ended up in a debtor's prison, with the whole Gorham Phelps purchase, the history of that. Like that is all interesting to me. And I'm not like saying, oh, like, maybe I am related to the Dulleses. I mean, I have obviously thought that.
I didn't know that you'd made the connection, so I wasn't giving you anything new.
Because somebody said to me one time, I just posted, Stephen Douglas was in a debate in 1856 or whatever, or 1860 with Lincoln, and Douglas won the debate and was elected senator. And the guy has this literally pre-programmed, like 10-page thing. Stephen Douglas was the worst man in history, and Frederick Douglass said he was the most racist. The arch enemy of the black man was Stephen Douglas, and all this stuff. And I was just like, look, all I said was that Douglas beat him in the Senate election. I did not say that Stephen Douglas was a good guy or a bad guy. I just stated the fact that they had debates that are famous, and that he won the Senate seat over Lincoln. And it was this pre-programmed thing. I'm like, why the heck are people so against, like, it was literally this like pre-programmed Douglas thing. And then of course I read that Stephen Douglas meets with what was the Smith that was the founder of the first Mormon,
Joseph.
Joseph Smith, who was also from the Finger Lakes, right there where they were. And he had some dinner with Stephen Douglas, and he's like, "Listen, Judge Douglas, like you're gonna want to be president. If you raise your hand against the Mormons, like you'll feel the weight of the entire Mormon faith against you for eternity or whatever." So he puts the hex on Douglas. So I'm like, why are people so programmed to be against the Douglases? And maybe it is because they are the Douglases, and that is the real background. But I also know that there were Douglases in Scotland that were supposed to be the wealthiest family in Scotland, and they got wiped out in the unification of the crowns, and that they were the big losers in the it was the Hamilton and Douglas family got in the big court case, and it was the talk of the whole big story over who got the title and the castles and all that stuff. And it was the Douglases that lost. So I'm always just like, well, what's the deal? And maybe that was it. Maybe Allen Dulles, and John Foster Dulles knew those. And they're like, look, we're going to make everybody pay for all that. And, that's not how I don't feel that way at all. Like where I feel like, I've had a, great schooling. I have a great family. I do not like wish ill on people. I certainly don't wish people to get sick or have bad consequences from choices they make during, like whatever they do. Because I mean, obviously with my own family, I don't know what's going to happen. And so I just, I have made that connection. Because like I've said, I mean, I'm learning about the Edward Beneš and his role as the president of Czechoslovakia and what he was involved in, because his granddaughter was my mom's friend growing up. She used to go over to their house. And again, it's like, you think, oh, Czechoslovakia, okay, like, no big deal, but you don't learn till later that Czechoslovakia's gold was basically the whole, we talk about Helmar Schlecht and it was the Czech, gold that basically became the Bank of International Settlements. So if you want Dulles and, Byrne, hanging out with the psychiatrist, what's his name? Carl Jung, they're in the mix for all that stuff. But, the more I like, what's it like? Because I'm always like, well, how did the granddaughter of Bernays and Bennis end up in Bloomington? Because again, it's like Bloomington. Like I don't know if you've been there. It is like literally the most like middle America. Like when I say like think of like a John Mellencamp song about like the heartbeat of America, just like a college town with all the beautiful limestone buildings. Like that's Bloomington. It's very down home. It's not like a mover and shaker. Like it doesn't seem like these world figures would end up in Bloomington, but they did. And I'm like, well, how did they end up there? Well, how did they end up at Indiana University? So those are the things that I try to figure out, is how people migrate from because again, like New Harmony Colony, like that doesn't mean much to most people. But again, I had the McClure that was supposedly, both my grandma and grandpa both had McClure. And if you look at the original New Harmony Colony, that it was the McClure that did the first geological survey of the United States, was a McClure from the New Harmony Colony, and he was brought from Philadelphia. And the other intrigue with Indiana, I know you always say the creepy Indiana, Pasadena, California, where the Jet Propulsion Lab and Caltech and all that stuff was originally the Indiana colony. And it was the money from the natural gas boom in northern Indiana that they took that money and they wanted to go to Southern California and develop railroads and industry in Southern California. And that was the Indiana colony, was Pasadena. So all the stuff with Guggenheim and Jet Propulsion Lab, then you get into all the, creepy suicide squads and Aleister Crowley and all the, Hubbard, doing the Scientology stuff. That is, again, I'm like, is that my family, or is that like people that were coming in and basically trying to, wipe out my relatives that were there? Because again, like my grandpa's brother, he was supposedly the manager of the Chrysler plant, but he was in Pasadena in the 20s and everything, and there, obviously there was a lot of stuff there. So so when I say like I don't like a Mather or Harvard, or I'm skeptical of those things, it is with like I try to be thoughtful before I really go off on somebody.
You're a very thoughtful man, and I appreciate it. You know, we don't have to call them evil. We can
Sorry,
just say that they're wrong. You know, this book has been very helpful to me on this point. This Rockefeller Medicine Men book, published in '79 by E. Richard Brown. I read a little of it last week before I started on the real Anthony Fauci book, because it kind of one leads into the other. But what you learn from his uh, writing here in this book is the attitude of the elites in the 19th century, in the early 20th century, and they're not out there to to do evil just for fun. They're not out there to be terrorists just for fun. These are methods to achieve their ends, and the reason that they can do it is because they belong to the superior race. And as a custodian of basically of the world, if you look at the Bible from a Calvinist point of view, you've been put in charge of the world, and you are out there to develop it to the benefit of mankind and to make use of things as you see fit. And to them, that means other people, especially people who don't look like them or didn't go to their schools or didn't have the family connections. And it's not because they're bad. It's because that is what they believe. They believe it because their parents believed it, and their parents believed it, and the preacher at the local high church Anglican church believes it, or the Presbyterians, or the Catholics, whoever it is. They've inculcated into these elite minds the idea that yes, it's right. You are supreme. And if you want to get back to the top of our show tonight, if you're looking for white supremacists, look in the upper income brackets first. Look in the New England old money. Look in the British royals. Look in the nobility of Europe. Look in the popes. Look in the blatantly racist.
Yeah.
It's not hard to find. It's just in America we're not taught that. In America, we think the whole world believes in freedom and democracy and human rights. We think everybody thinks the way we do. But in fact, most people are powerless. They're serfs, or they're too poor to do anything, and or uneducated. Most people are powerless. Um, those of us that are educated are probably more or less powerless, but at least we have a chance to get together and sort things out and try to find the truth and try to do something to make the world better. But the powerful ones are the ones that have this inculcated sense of superiority that it's just so tragic that it's not that. And so I can't say that they're evil. I just think that they are terribly, terribly wrong, and the tragedies that follow from their being wrong about that. This is one of my big themes: is that there's not an overpopulation problem. There's plenty of room. And why are we going to Mars if not to expand humanity throughout the solar system? Why are we going to the moon? Why are we doing all of this stuff? Is it just to show off that we can do it? No, we've got to expand. We've got to keep going. We've got to be the big humanity that really does take on the big challenges, like Kennedy would have said. We're not going there because it's easy. We're doing these things because they're hard, but we can do them, and we're committing ourselves to do them, not because we want to show off, but because we know that there's going to be more humans in the future, and that we're going to need more assets, and we're going to need to go out and mine the asteroids, or find some water on the moon, or whatever the current actual need is to prepare for a much bigger humanity. And these folks are keeping the lid on us. They're like pushing the lid down on the pots that are trying to boil over, and we're trying to be what God wants us to be, to expand. And they're saying, no, no, you've got to stay small, and you've got to take birth control pills, and you've got to, uh, you know, turn sex into a recreational activity instead of, a sacrament of marriage, the way the, my parents' generation was taught. Um, it's all the elites. They're scared to death. They know that if they don't keep the lid on us, that sooner or later we're going to have to disassemble their world, the world that they've built around these secret societies, and going, no, don't look to Scotland for the origin of this stuff. More likely to look in Babylon or ancient Egypt, I think, because it's not new. The idea that you can go out and use that zero-sum game and create a conflict, this is like my mother used to say, never listen to somebody that says, hey, let's you and him go fight. But that's the game. They figure out some way to get two sides to fight. There's destruction, there's a mess, and then they make their order out of chaos. At least they make money out of it. Whether they make order, I don't think they really do.
And sadly, I feel like they, at least for the last 150 years, it's, having people live with chronic pain and selling them medication for it is a big part of it. And that's,
Yeah.
it's just, it's never laid out that way. It's always, to get rid of the bad guys or the terrorizers. And, again, it's just, where I live is a, in Detroit is a place that, it used to be the fourth wealthiest city in the world, they said. And it, used to be the arsenal of democracy. And it's really, I don't know. I mean, I love this area, but it's also really depressing to see how things have places have rotted or, gone out of use. And there's a lot of poverty and problems. And, and again, it's like, I do think that we can solve those problems, but it's just not the focus. It's never to, I don't know. I mean, I mean, when people talk about like going to Mars and all that, I would like to, I don't know. I feel like it would be nice to have like Pontiac and Detroit be really nice cities, where there isn't widespread blight, and and that's just not, and again, like I think that there is like bigger purposes. I think with Detroit specifically, I think we're a very busy port city, and there's a lot of international trade that goes through our border, and I think they're able to collect their tolls from that. So they're able to really monetize it. So having it be nice isn't a big priority, because they still make the same money, plus it attracts less attention. And I think that, where you live, I feel like Baltimore is a similar situation. They took certain cities and they just sort of let them have riots and drug infestations. And
Look at Hartford, Connecticut. Sorry to interrupt you, but we were just talking about the insurance industry. Hartford, Connecticut. Well, the Hartford Fire Insurance Company, or Hartford Insurance, the overall umbrella company, was merged, and the capital then went into the IT&T. That sucks a whole lot of money out of the city of Hartford. And the city of Hartford has just declined like crazy, and it has ghettos and crime, and the population is going down. And this is a beautiful city, and that's it. The capital goes. You see all the money left. The northern tier after World War II. They air conditioning, right? Atlanta, Dallas, Houston. The oil boom and everything. Well, who needs a small factory town in New England anymore? Who needs to the money's being made now down south in the boom towns like Atlanta and Charlotte, North Carolina, for goodness sakes. That's what happened to the beautiful cities of the north, is that the money, like we say, they don't care about humanity. They just want to need to make some more money. Need to make it. Well, we need to call this a night.
been a marathon talk, but yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, I feel like it's been hard for me because I do feel like there is I'm very empathetic to your experience with your dad, because I feel like my own father had a similar thing, and then my grandpa also lost his father at a young age. So even though that stuff didn't happen to me, I didn't get to meet those people, and I guess that's the thing that really makes me the most frustrated about it, is that I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of sizing people up, and to not be given the opportunity to at least like form my own opinion from a relationship is something that I really that is something that really does make me angry, is that I am not able to decide for myself, and then to just have sort of hearsay, y- you know because again, it's like I don't have, like, none of this has been explained to me. Um, as far as I knew, my family started, from my grandparents' generation. They were all farmers and unexciting backgrounds. And, so it is something that, I do wish that I could have met people. And, I do feel terrible for people that, lost their parents or whatever young. And, because I know, I don't know. I know with like, my dad, it really was really hard for him to lose his mom.
Yeah, yeah. Well, gosh, it's true, and like all of my Connecticut relatives, once my dad died, I had very little to do with them, and it's sad, but you can't talk to them. They're all, I think they're all scared to death, frankly. I
Yeah.
think that they're all just like quaking, and a number of them turned into alcoholics,
Yeah.
but then a couple of them, or one of them, is went straight into the WASP scene, and uh, raised his family in the tradition of the WASP elites, and I'm sorry, but I can't. I just don't have anything in common with them. But I have these old pictures. I have pictures of going back 5 generations of O'Loughlin's and Kelleher's and Delaney's, and they're fascinating pictures. And I still have an older aunt or grand aunt who's alive, that I think I should call her up and try to get through these pictures. And then I say, no, no, she didn't want to talk to me the last time. She probably still doesn't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
It's sad,
That's
but
hard.
we'll survive.
Yeah.
We survive, and we get up the next day, and we go out and kick some butt, and people are doing it all around the country, all around the world. Don't feel like we're losing. We're not losing. We're going to win. Whether I'm alive when we win, I don't know, but we're going to win. So keep the faith, David.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks a lot.